Are we doing it,
But we're
are we
live, so
just
we have
leaving
to.
it Test 1 2 3 4 5. 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 Test 1 2 3 4 5.
Test her out. Yep.
because it looks so. How much money they could save with that cement.
Here we go. Yes. To let them know to start recording. 30 seconds before.
Good evening and welcome to the January 21st, 2025 Finance Committee meeting. Director Hollick, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Honorable Mayor Tack,
Here.
Chair Weber,
Here.
Alderman Novak,
Here.
Alderman Clemmons,
Here.
Alderman Notes, Alderman Powers,
Here.
Alderman Gutierrez is absent, Alderman Walther,
Here.
Alderman Levert.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first item of business this evening is a consideration of minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held on November 12th, 2024. Do we have any comments or edits to those minutes? Seeing none, may I ask for a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Our next item of business, I will invite Assistant Finance Director Diane Hall to update us on the grant program and recommendations. As you know,
Okay. All right, Madam Chairman and members of the Finance Committee, I am here to present our 2024 grant program, which has been a very robust program over the number of years. Just as some background, back in January of 21, the City Council did approve a contract with the Ferguson Group, who does provide grant potentials for identified projects that the city has, especially in the CIP program. And we've also contracted with Carasoft Technology, which provides a very nice grant tracking program, so that way we know which grants have been, applications have been submitted, where they are in implementation, and to make sure we have received the appropriate funding from the grant programs. This is our 4th annual report, and I'll also be identifying programs that we are recommending for 2025. In the last 5 years, the city has received $19.6 million in grant awards. So a majority of these grants are during COVID, which included the ARPA funding, storm sewer projects, and multiple road projects. So we do have a nice variety over the different programs to ensure that multiple projects get funded. And over the years, these are just some of the notable grant awards. The ARPA funding has funded the Ahwahnee Storm Sewer project. We have the Burr Oak Storm Sewer project, was a great asset to the city. Notably, recently for the Seminary Ravine, we did receive almost $1 million. And I just want to note the picture in the bottom right-hand corner. Representative Schneider did come out and meet with city staff to go over the project, so it was one of his initiatives that we worked through that grant program. And recently, we did receive $200,000 for the McClurry Bike Path. So included in the 5-year proposed CIP, we do have $110 million in projects. Of this $110 million projects, $14.53 million are funded through grant opportunities. So this really expands the CIP program and allows additional funding, which is 13% of the 5-year CIP program. This is just a comparison of the report that we provided for 23 to 24. We did receive 70 grant opportunity notifications, and staff does provide feedback to the Ferguson Group whether or not these grant opportunities would fit current projects. We did submit 10 applications. We did receive 2 grant awards for the year. We do have 7 applications still pending, and over the last 2 years, we've received $4.5 million in grant funding. In 2024, we listed potential projects we would really have identified as high priority that we would really like the Ferguson Group to, really provide additional resources on where we have grant opportunities. We did file a grant application for the Wesley Road resurfacing, but we were not awarded that grant. We did seek additional funding for the Seminary Ravine projects. The additional Lake Woodbine Bridge that was discussed at the Capital Workshop has been submitted, so that is still pending. Some of the other programs, no funding was identified through the year, but we will still keep pursuing additional grants if those opportunities arise. So for the 2025 program goals, staff takes our CIP program and we do review the projects that cannot move forward without additional funding sources. So these projects are provided to the Ferguson Group, so they have really a good list to really know exactly what we're looking for. We'll also work with the departments to see if there's any other needs that they have identified, and we're also looking to make sure we have projects that are already designed, because that makes a very more favorable when we are applying for grants. If you have it shovel ready, we are in a better position. And I just want to note, we have one under for a fire station renovation with the current public safety building project. There is a new program that they've released and has been unheard of to be released this type of program. So the city will be applying for this grant to help with either the design or the construction of the rehabilitation of the, or redesign of the fire station. And I would be happy to answer any questions on our grant program.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much, Diane. This was just an informational item for discussion. Share, and we will come back for a vote at the end of our discussion.
Thank you very much, Chair Weber. We're really going to provide you a summary of what we did during calendar year 24 and what recommendations we have going forward in 25. Just as an overview, the city's investment policy was last revised in May of 2022. The investment policy does not include the pension funds, which are invested at the consolidated statewide level with IFPIP and IPOPIF, or the cemetery trust funds, which are invested through the Cemetery Commission. As a reminder, we are subject to the Illinois Public Funds Investment Act, and so that statute really sets forth the types of investments that we are able to invest in with the city's public funds. The objectives of the investment policy in priority order is safety of the principal of our investments, liquidity, and return. This just summarizes the different authorized investments under the Illinois Public Funds Investment Act and the city's investment policy. You will note that there are no equity investments, so we are not allowed to use public funds as the fire and police pension funds or the cemetery trust can. We are not able to invest in equity securities. So we are limited on the returns that we can generate with those public dollars. In the investment portfolio and policy, the finance director is required to meet with the committee annually to discuss two main components of the city's investment program. First is the segmentation into liquidity and core. So liquidity sets the amounts that we must retain as being available and on demand, whereas the core percentage is allowed to be invested in the other investment vehicles. And then the benchmark confirmation and selection. We have specific benchmarks that we include on our quarterly investment report so that you can see how our performance is doing relative to the benchmark selected. So this is a busy graph, and it goes back to December of 2007 to just look at three different interest rates, one being the Fed funds rate, set by the Federal Reserve, the depository rate that we were earning from Lake Forest Bank and Trust on our deposits with Wintrust, and the 3-year T-note. And so what you'll note is those rates are going to move together. And so when we started to talk to the Finance Committee in 2017 about updating the investment policy and creating an investment program, it was with the thought that when rates did eventually rise, which they did after many, many years, we would have the opportunity to capitalize on those higher interest rates and put some of those dollars in long-term investments so that when rates fell again, we would have certain investments earning those higher interest rates. So that just shows kind of the path of the rates. We did the investment policy update in 2017. In 2019, we contracted with Multibank Securities to use their eConnect Direct platform. We engaged them in August of 2019 and continue to use them. We began to purchase CDs in July of 2022, and then based on the recommendation we made to the Finance Committee last January, we started incorporating treasuries into the portfolio in July of 2024. This is just a screen of the eConnect Direct platform. The advantage to this application is that we can do competitive review of investment products and maturities online, shop for those in a very convenient software application, and then make those purchases online. So it's a very, very efficient application for us. Last year, in this presentation, we were talking about the environment of the inverted yield curve. So from October of 2022 to about middle of 2024, there really was no incentive in investing money long-term because the interest rate on those longer-term investments were actually lower than the near-term rates. And so we talked about that being a challenge last January and the need to wait until those longer-term interest rates began to rise before we would really start purchasing investments in the 5 to 10-year category. What a difference a year makes. So this is where we stood as of yesterday or Friday the 17th. This is a screen from the eConnect Direct platform that just shows Treasury yields changing constantly. So I can go into this platform and see at any time of day when the market is open where those yields are, whether the percentage is going up or down, and then just to see the range of Treasury yields from 1 month to 30 years. So this is a much more typical yield curve, one that is what we are dealing with most often. And so as this began to change over the course of calendar year 2024, that was the time at which we could start putting investments in long term. This just compares our cash and investments that fall under our policy, what we looked like at 12/31/23 and what we looked like at 12/31/24. So you can see available cash and investments increased from 119 at the end of 23 to 124, 124 million at the end of 24. And what you'll see is last year when we were here, most of our money, 65%, was in Lake Forest Bank and Trust, and another 27% was in Illinois Funds, which is also an on-demand pool on the statewide level. And those were earning very competitive interest rates, 5.55 and 5.46% last year. And so we had only a small percentage of our portfolio in certificates of deposit, earning a range of 3.55 to 5.6%. Now, if you look to the right, you now see a much more balanced approach based on the investment purchases we've made throughout calendar 24. So currently, only 48% of our cash and investments are at Lake Forest Bank and Trust, earning 4.6%. 21% at Illinois Funds, earning 4.69. 20% now is in Treasuries, earning rates from 3.9 to 4.6%, and certificates of deposit of about 10% of the total, earning rates of 3.55 to 5%. And then we provide you a quarterly investment report, and we include that in the flash report on the website to show the detailed investments that make up this pool of treasuries and certificates of deposit. Another focus for us as we invested over the course of the year was laddering the maturities. And so this gives you a picture at 12/31/24. This is the total of the certificates of deposit and treasuries through eConnect Direct and their maturities by year. So we have tried to not concentrate a lot of the investments in a single year, because if that's a down interest rate environment, then we'll be reinvesting at a low rate. So we've spread those maturities out. And when Treasury yields really started to rise in 2024 through the assistance of the chair and the city manager, approval was granted to purchase treasuries significantly out years. So we have treasuries now maturing in 2039, 2042, and 2044, earning very, very competitive interest rates. And so if that Fed rate went down to below 2% or down to near zero where we were for so long, these treasuries would continue earning those 4+% for the city. I also just wanted to mention the library investment program. So the library executive director was at the finance committee meeting last January and remained very interested in what we were doing. So I met with the library finance committee several times over the course of 2024. In July, the City Council approved a memorandum of understanding between the city and the library board, allowing them to use the eConnect Direct platform. And so in consultation with their library finance committee and the library executive director, the city will purchase investments through the eConnect Direct platform with library funds that we hold and manage for them. So this is a picture of a report that I provide them occasionally, just showing them their library cash balances and what their investments in multi-bank securities through eConnect Direct total. So they have now invested, as of 12/31/24, $2.2 million in treasuries and CDs, similar to what the city is doing to accomplish the same thing with the assets that they can invest for a longer term. I'd also just note on your omnibus agenda tonight is a memorandum of understanding amendment requested by the library board. They have been so happy with the program. Now they would like to increase their authority to use eConnect Direct, both in the total dollar amount of investment purchases, but also in the maturities. So now with those longer duration investments earning very competitive interest rates, they'd like to lock up some longer term investments in their portfolio as well. Segmentation, so this is the difference between the liquidity and the core segments of your cash and investments. This was the recommendation we made that was approved by the Finance Committee in January of last year. We separate our funds into different categories based on their reserve balances, the type of funds they are, and provided you recommendations on liquidity and core segmentation for those different groups of funds. And so in the top category, that includes the general fund, we recommended maintaining 60% of that in liquid on-demand cash and core of 40%. And then as you go down, you can see the different categories of funds and the segmentation approved for last year. The right column just provides the percentage at 12/31/24. So we were a little under in the top category, slightly over in two of those categories, but combined the segmentation was over the goal by 175,000. So that's a simple CD maturity, wasn't anything significantly out of whack. So in offering segmentation recommendations for 2025, we've gone back and reviewed now the investment portfolio that we have as of 12/31/24. I think with rates where they are now, the only recommendation we're making for changes for 2025 is in that first group, where it was 60% liquid, 40% core. For 2024, we're recommending 50-50. That would allow about $5 million more to be invested in CDs or treasuries earning competitive yields. But certainly with the significant fund balance reserves you maintain in the general fund, the water operating fund, and the insurance funds, there is no concern about liquidity if we move to 50-50. So that is our recommendation and our only recommended change for 2025. And as mentioned, that would take the total based on the balances as of 12/31/24 to about $42.3 million in investments, and that would be 37% of your total, excluding the cemetery, library, and pension. The second recommendation for your consideration this evening is benchmarks. We think these 5 benchmarks have worked well. You have 3 benchmarks for your liquidity segment and 2 for your core. We think these have worked well. No reason to recommend any changes for those for 2025. So again, for your consideration this evening, it's just this recommended change in the segmentation and affirmation of the benchmarks for the program in 2025. Happy to answer any questions.
She does such a great job. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much. I'll ask for a motion then to approve staff recommendations for the recommended segmentation change and affirmation of benchmarks and investment strategy for 2025. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion carries. Excellent. Elizabeth, I'll bring you back on, if you don't mind, please, to discuss the organizational performance measures for fiscal year 26.
Certainly. Thank you again, Chair Weber. Organizational performance measures are included in the city's annual budget document. And as you know, a few years ago, we really enhanced the budget document by incorporating the strategic plan priority areas using icons throughout the budget document. So it's very easy as you go through the budget document to see where a particular goal or achievement in the budget is related to a strategic plan priority area. The City Council approved a new 5-year strategic plan in October, and so we did this summary for you to show what we're recommending as far as changes for organizational performance measures. On the left are the priority areas on your previous strategic plan that were included in the 25 budget. For the fiscal year 26 budget, we have new classifications of strategic plan priority areas, and most of the existing organizational performance measures fit within those categories. So you can see here that although there may be some shifting from one priority area to another, those measures are not recommended for change. However, the significant new aspect to the strategic plan is the communications and community engagement strategic plan priority area, which is completely new. And so we would have that identified as a priority area in the new budget, and we needed to develop organizational performance measures for that group. So the recommendations are the email newsletter open rate, email subscribers, and annual city website views. And so we're just asking for the Finance Committee's review and approval of those organizational performance measures, and then staff will work on the updated data. And as part of your March budget workshop, you'll see the new organizational performance measures document with data for each of these performance measures. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Alderman Clements?
Elizabeth, what's email newsletter open rate?
So that is when you get e-news at the end, I think.
Friday.
On Fridays, the Friday e-news. The system can track the rate at which people are opening and accessing that information.
Any other questions? I think it makes a lot of sense for us to really take a deeper dive into this information. I know we've invested a lot into our communications department and restructuring and a big focus with a lot of these projects. So sometimes we've asked, well, how many people are subscribed? Well, how do you know who's looking at this information that you're investing time, energy, and effort into putting out? So I think this information coming back will be very helpful. Please.
Could you tell me what's the difference between the multimodal transportation and infrastructure and the infrastructure and city facilities?
So in developing the updated strategic plan, a lot of the categories that were included in the former strategic plan still applied, but they were just retooled a bit in the new strategic plan. So the infrastructure and city facilities includes transportation, but it also includes other aspects of the infrastructure in the city. So in the previous strategic plan, there was more of an emphasis on transportation. And in the new, it is infrastructure that includes transportation, but also facilities and other infrastructure components. And that's why you really see the same performance measures moving from that category over to the new infrastructure and city facilities.
Alderman Notes?
Under infrastructure and city facilities, can you elaborate on any discussion or thought that was given to including things like the need to renovate the fire station, assuming the police station moves forward, future plans for the rec center, and anything more global in terms of overall city facilities that we know was on the horizon?
So I would have to go back to the new strategic plan to see if it mentioned the recreation center.
Yeah, and I will say specific to these performance measures, the idea is, I think, from the staff perspective, is to track data where there are measurable metrics year over year to measure and monitor projects progress. So for like individual one-off projects, they're certainly identified as priorities, but from a performance measurement perspective, you know, it's a one-off project and then it's completed. Whereas assessing condition of our streets is a continual ongoing exercise for us. And so I think that's why the distinction's made.
Anything in regard to, say, evaluating heating and ventilation unit repairs and assessing the the lifespan of some of those facilities? Because that would be measurable.
Yeah, certainly we could do that. I'd look towards Public Works, but ultimately, you know, this is an opportunity to get feedback from the council. If there are performance metrics in any of these categories that you think are important, now would be the time to voice that, and certainly we can incorporate them in. Director Thomas, any thoughts on that one in particular?
Specifically to facilities, we've got very solid. How about that? How about them Cubs? With regards to facilities, we have a very strong capital plan, very comprehensive plan, and it's very specific to all of our buildings. So we've got a very good analysis on lifespan of all those facilities, all the HVAC units, all of that. That has existed probably for the past 5 to 7 years. So does that answer
So I guess,
your question, Alderman Notes? Or
to your point, if we wanted to add a category measuring, for example, the average age of, we can identify certain mechanical systems throughout city facilities, I think that's something we can do. We have the data for it.
Well, I mean, the consideration should be, is that data useful to make a decision versus, you know, at what point, you know, for instance, when we choose to replace something in the fleet, you know, the cost to keep repairing that garbage truck is gotten, it just doesn't make sense to keep putting good money
Correct.
into something bad.
right.
I mean, I guess I'd ask the staff, are there quantitative things that make sense to measure that?
You know, I guess I would say that we have that data, and we do use that data when we develop that capital plan on an annual basis. So we do it with every piece of equipment. I know Eric Houston and Jim Lockefear do it when they're analyzing all the buildings infrastructure pieces as well. So yeah, we have all of that specific data. We know exactly how much money we spent on material, how much money we spent on labor, how much money we spent on contractual services for all of the city fleet and for all of these items in the city building. So that data we have, and that then drives our capital plan. Decisions for a capital plan, more so recommendations that we make to Finance Committee in November.
And so I guess maybe to your point, if it pleases the council, maybe we'll review with our building maintenance staff and can report back at the March budget workshop how useful that data and information would be for us. I don't pretend to be an expert on that, but I know when we talk about useful life of mechanical systems, there is sort of a benchmark number that can be of use, but I know the staff has done a very good job of engaging in proactive maintenance that can extend the useful life of those. And so probably want to get their input as to how useful that information would be, but we can report back to the council at the March workshop.
And whether, if there's something discernible.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And you may, for those who are newer to the council, just for informational purposes, this was a topic that was definitely of interest to the council, I want to say maybe 3-4 years ago. And as a result of direction from the council, the city staff engaged in a pretty comprehensive facility assessment for all city buildings to identify the current condition of each of the buildings we maintain. And we own and maintain, what, 30-some buildings? 34 buildings, and then also identifying proactive maintenance steps to in a more cost-effective manner, extend those useful lives. So that was a high priority for the city a few years ago. We have the data. Let us go back and see if it makes sense to incorporate it into this.
Thank you. Good discussion. Any other thoughts? Great. Seeing none, then I would ask for a motion to approve the organizational performance measures for FY26 and perhaps including then a follow-up on facilities maintenance.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Under other business tonight, we just have a couple of things for informational purposes and no action required. The first is the flash report, which is published on the city's website for reference. We have the 5-year capital improvement plan update, which is in your packet there to review, and then we will have an additional update will be provided at our March budget workshop. And also, we have the draft innovation and technology 5-year plan is also attached. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to our interim IT director, Cam Burrell, with any questions. I'll now ask if there's anyone from
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Thank you. Would you like a 5-minute break or move right on? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, I thought I had turned it on already.
Hello, hello.
I was popping mine on and off.
I wasn't turning mine on.
Turn it on. Welcome to the Tuesday, January 21st, 2025 session of the Lake Forest City Council. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Certainly. Honorable Mayor Tack.
Here.
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 Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Before we get to comments by mayor, I'm going to turn this over to City Manager Jason Wishop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before I turn it back to you, I just wanted to provide a few comments associated with the resolution that's before you. We got a visitor back there. And I just wanted to take a couple minutes to acknowledge Elizabeth's impact, both to our organization and to the entire community. And I think as public servants, whether at a staff or at a volunteer level, our ultimate goal is to try to leave the place that we serve better than the day we walked in the door. And I think no one can claim that more than Elizabeth can. And to go all the way back to the start of her tenure, some of you may know, when she started, the city was coming out of some very difficult financial times. The city had been employing personnel reductions, revisiting service delivery models, and you think about from that point to where we stand today, probably in the strongest financial position, at least arguably, of any community in the state of Illinois. And an enormous part of that is really due to Elizabeth and her brilliance and her leadership. And I would say not just acknowledging sort of the stable operational model that we have within our budget, but also proactively addressing a lot of the long-term liabilities that are, soon to plague, I think, a lot of municipalities in the state of Illinois. And I know, Mr. Mayor, you'll address plenty of those in your resolution, so I won't steal your thunder and go into those. But I do want to acknowledge, beyond just some of the larger accomplishments, I think Elizabeth's biggest legacy will really just be the impact she's had on our organizational culture, and really every operational human resource related decision across every department is inherently viewed through a financial lens first, and not just viewed in the immediate impacts, but really with a long-term horizon. How will these decisions today impact our organization 5, 10, 15 years from now? And it sounds so simple, but it is not something practiced in a lot of communities, and she deserves an enormous amount of credit for having all of us view these decisions through that lens. And I don't have to tell this group, too, of her commitment to creativity, finding solutions with limited resources. It's easy to just try to add full-time staff to solve every problem, but she was everybody's go-to as we were trying to think about creative solutions that could address problems in a much more cost-effective manner, and that creativity is certainly going to be missed. It is a very large shoes that need to be filled by whoever comes after her. And so again, aside from the legacy of accomplishments that'll be shared in a few minutes, I just want to take an opportunity to say, on behalf of the entire city staff, thank you for all that you've done throughout all of the individual and short-term conversations. I know that there's not a single employee in this organization who's not better personally and who recognize their departments being better collectively because of all of your efforts. And so you're going to be very much missed, but we're happy for you and wish you, Ted and Jenna and the family, all the best in your next chapter. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, before I turn it back over to you, I'd like to introduce a guest who's here with us tonight. The CEO of the Illinois Municipal League, Brad Cole, is joining us. Brad's had the privilege of working with Elizabeth on several issues that I think reflect her impact well beyond the city of Lake Forest, but throughout the industry statewide. And so Brad's here to share a few words as well, and I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and City Council. I am Brad Cole, CEO of the Illinois Municipal League. It's a pleasure to be here in this beautiful facility. Sitting through the 10-minute or so presentation you just had on investments reminded me of the about 200 hours of that we've sat through the last 5 years in building the Illinois Police Officers Pension Investment Fund, which Elizabeth is and has been until now a member of, a trustee. Before I get to Elizabeth, I want to thank the City of Lake Forest and you for your membership in the Municipal League, but more so with respect to Elizabeth for allowing her the time to be able to assist us with the creation of that fund. And it was time and an investment of your resources to allow her to meet with us. Sometimes, well, we started out meeting in Lisle, and we're now meeting in Peoria. But I want to thank the city for allowing her to make an impact statewide. And then I want to particularly thank, and for both her and her family and your community, I want to thank Elizabeth for that work. When I say hundreds of hours, that is not an exaggeration. It may not be an adequate estimation of the time that has been spent over the last 5 years in building the Police Officers Pension Investment Fund. I serve as chair of the Firefighters Fund, and I'm a trustee on the police board too. And we started with zero of everything. Zero staff, $0 to invest, zero rate of return, zero rules, zero regulations, zero custodians, zero investment policy, zero everything. And we just closed our last fiscal year with a net of fees return of 11.7%, which is beneficial to this community and every other community that is a member of that fund. I want to just say it couldn't have happened without Elizabeth's help and without her guidance as a treasurer of the fund and a steadfast supporter of the municipal position from day one. I don't entirely remember the genesis of her coming on. I think I just called and asked her if she would do it. If she called and asked me, it was a bad mistake on her part. But I think from the beginning, when we first met, she was committed to the municipal interest, representing the employers, maintaining the desire to reduce fees, increase return, and to protect the taxpayers. She's done that every step of the way. And so not much of a token, but we do have, the Illinois Municipal League, we do have a standing tall recognition that we present, and it's in honor of our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, who was a tall individual and stood tall. And I want to present to her it's not a plaque, you won't have a wall to put it on, but your desk, or it could be a weapon if you need it, so just be careful at home. But a statue of Abraham Lincoln, who stood tall for the people of Illinois, and in recognition of your standing tall on behalf of the cities, villages, and towns throughout Illinois, the taxpayers, in establishing the Illinois Police Officers Pension Investment Fund. And just to close, and thank you, Mayor, and with your dispensation, I may seek to be excused from the rest of the meeting. I'll stick around, but I may not stay the whole time. But I just want to close and say what a personal privilege it has been to work with you and to get to know you and to count you as both a colleague and a friend. So thank you, Elizabeth, on behalf of the Illinois Municipal League, and thank you to the City of Lake Forest.
Very good. Okay, at this point, we're going to move on to ask for approval of a resolution of appreciation for retiring finance director, Elizabeth Holliban. Before I read the resolution, I just want to sort of add my own personal comments. I've had 8 years to spend watching Elizabeth. I learned a tremendous amount from her. I understood many things because of her that otherwise would have been complete mysteries to me. And the other thing I would say about her is she has this crystal ball that I'm going to ask you to leave here, because for 8 years we would ask Elizabeth to tell us, if we do that, what's that going to look like? And she was always able to come back and give us a fairly detailed and incredibly accurate view of what the effect of what we were going to do or might do would be. And literally, I cannot think of one occasion where we did something and the effect of what we did wasn't essentially what she told us that it would be. And the power of that is really incredible, and the city's benefited tremendously from that. It's really been an honor to work with you, and so thank you very much for that. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and move to the resolution. It's in here somewhere. All right. Whereas Elizabeth A. Holub has been a dedicated employee of the City of Lake Forest since June 1st, 2012, and will honorably retire from the city on January 24th, 2025. And whereas Elizabeth has an extraordinary gift for all things financial, and for 12 and a half years, the City of Lake Forest has reaped the benefits of her financial insights, creativity, and sound judgment. And whereas Elizabeth consistently demonstrated a commitment to excellence and to the highest ethical standards and challenged and expected all those around her to do the same. And whereas Elizabeth is often described as brilliant, her financial acumen, her knowledge, skill, experience, and confidence are recognized well beyond the City of Lake Forest at both the state and federal levels, as evidenced by her selection for participation in and training of many groups dealing with all levels of public finance. And whereas Elizabeth's strong leadership led to recognition and many honors for the city, including consistently achieving a AAA bond rating year after year, being awarded the city's first Distinguished Budget Presentation and Popular Financial Reporting Awards from the Government Finance Officers Association, and earning the coveted Triple Crown distinction for the last 3 years, one of only 354 of 90,000 units of government to do so. And whereas Elizabeth led countless transformational initiatives that will long benefit the city, most notably the selection and implementation of the city's enterprise resource planning system software, which enhanced operational efficiencies and transparency throughout the city organization, establishing a proactive funding strategy for public safety pension obligations, which will have significant long-term benefits for the city and is a model for other municipalities. Implementing an investment program to insulate the city from interest rate declines, creating a citywide grant program and tracking system, playing a key role in establishing and tracking the Laurel and Western Avenues Tax Increment Financing District, coordinating 6 city bond issuances totaling $64.8 million, and initiating 3 bond refunding issues, saving the city nearly $3 million in interest. And, I'm going to read off the next page. In the second page. All right, that helps. I don't have it committed to memory. Whereas Elizabeth vigorously advocated for the city's financial health at times, raising her voice when others might have been silent to express concern and cautions, as the country experienced economic ebbs and flows and a worldwide pandemic under her watchful eye, the city not only survived but thrived. Whereas Elizabeth leaves the city in a very solid and enviable financial condition that is her legacy. Whereas Elizabeth is a mentor and a teacher, patiently and professionally guiding and teaching those around her. Her colleagues in the finance department, staff in other departments throughout the city, volunteers leading city-related foundations, and others in municipal finance in the broader region. And whereas Elizabeth A. Holub will be missed by her colleagues, elected and appointed officials, and most of all by her friends. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Lake Forest that the Council, on behalf of the administration and residents of the community, express our deepest respect and sincere gratitude to Elizabeth A. Holub for her exemplary service, outstanding achievements, and unwavering commitment to public finance and the City of Lake Forest. Be it further resolved that this resolution be appropriately inscribed and conveyed to Elizabeth, with a copy to be included in the official minutes of the January 21st, 2025 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. May I have a motion to approve the resolution? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And I can't even begin to thank you all for the kind words and sentiments. And what a shock, Brad, for you to be here. Thank you so much, appreciated. First and most important, I want to thank my husband, Ted, and my daughter, Jenna, for your absolute and unwavering support for anything professionally I've ever wanted to do. You've backed me up, and that time away doing police investment fund work in Lisle and then Peoria took time away from home too. And a lot of times the things that I wanted to do professionally did cost us time at home, and you were always 100% supportive of that. So I thank you very much, because I couldn't have done it without you. My parents could not be here, but I want to thank them as well. I also want to thank the City Council, past and present, and City Manager Kiley and City Manager Wisha, for all of your support, for that constant long view. You are a finance director's dream. For us to be able to look at the long-term effects and really think in terms of the long-term financial stability and health of a city or a community is a luxury. And you've always been absolutely fully supportive of that long view. And it has been a thrill and honor to work in that environment for 12 and a half years. It's been a real pleasure. I do want to thank all the departments. Finance has that opportunity to touch every single department, division in the organization, be it accounting or payroll or budget. We get to have so much interaction with so many of the employees in the city. And so I want to thank all the staff and all the executive staff, department heads, for their constant support when we ask for things, or we have policies to enforce, or we need information. That is always there for us, and we appreciate it. And I will close with the thanks to my team. Some of you are here tonight. I appreciate that. I've told them a few times over the last few months that they were the single hardest reason for me to come to terms with it being time to retire and leave Lake Forest. They are an incredibly talented and committed group of people, And it is an absolute pleasure to come in and work with them every day. I leave you in very, very good hands, trust me. They are all committed and dedicated to the good work that we've been doing, and they'll continue to do that under somebody else's guidance. And I just want them to know how much I appreciate the work that they've done. I have not accomplished any of this by myself, and I just want to make sure that my thanks and gratitude for everybody's support over the last 12.5 years is spoken and known. So thank you very much. I won't be far, and I'm available if anybody needs me. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And before we move on, would any of the council members like to make comments? Alderman Novit.
I'll go first. Elizabeth, I cannot thank you enough for just translating all of this for someone who has absolutely no background in municipal finance. You were always available. You answered every repetitive question. You sat with me for way more time than you probably should have. But seriously, you made this all make sense to me, and I can't imagine anybody stepping into your role and handling it with as much grace and patience. Thank you for really, before I became a council member, I would call you, and you just always made it so easy. So thank you, and I will miss you. I will miss being able to pick up the phone and get answers to my questions. Thank you.
Are there others? Okay, Alderman Weber.
Thank you so much. I have a few comments prepared. Elizabeth, your leadership, expertise, and unwavering dedication have been the cornerstone of our community's financial success. You've guided us with wisdom and grace, ensuring our stability and growth through every challenge. More than that, you've been a mentor, a collaborator, and a true friend to so many of us, as you mentioned, with your team as well. And as you step into this next chapter, we wish you all the joy, relaxation, and adventure retirement has to offer. Your impact here will be felt for years to come, and you will be deeply missed. And to Jenna, as a mother, when your mother spoke about working hard on her profession and her career, that really sat with me because I know the toll it takes at home. And she's worked very hard. And we are all so, so grateful. Elizabeth, thank you.
Elizabeth, I just want to say thank you as a member of the community and also as a new alderman for your time and your talent. Again, both as a resident of Lake Forest, but also in the short time that we've worked together, how wonderful you were and generous with your time and knowledge to get me up to speed. So a personal thank you.
Others?
Picking up on Alice's comments, Elizabeth, in the opportunity as we come on city council, we sit down with all department heads, and finance is certainly one of the more ambiguous areas that typically we don't get ourselves involved with as a resident. And you did a phenomenal job educating me, and I expect everyone here on the dais and our predecessors who you've interacted with over the last, since 2012, echo the same sentiments. Thank you very much for all you did to prepare us to help keep the city going and the phenomenal care that you laid out for us to move forward with. Thank you.
Alderman Powers.
Elizabeth, you've been a gift to the city. You are a true professional. You are incredibly good at what you do, and thank you for all of it.
Alderman Walther.
Elizabeth, just one word, or two words actually, rock star. You are a rock star. And the biggest compliment that I think we all give you is we talk about you all the time and about how proud we are to work with you. So thank you for everything you've done for us.
Very good. One last question. Does Elizabeth have to stay through the remainder, or can she leave?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the agenda, but I think she can, yeah.
All right.
I think she's probably free to leave with her family.
However, can we take a few pictures before that happens?
Sure.
I could get the city council to stand and. We-
Okay. All right, just can't get enough. We're gonna do it now? Okay.
Are we coming?
No, behind her is great. Nancy, I can't see you. There you go.
The next item on the agenda is election and appointment of city officers, and this will be presented by Diane Hall.
It's just an appointment of Diane Hall as the interim.
Oh, okay, as the interim city treasurer.
That is correct.
I read it incorrectly, I'm sorry about that. I have a motion to approve the appointment of Diane Hall as the interim city treasurer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Sorry about that. All right. The next item is the appointment of Deputy Police Chief Michael Lang as the City of Lake Forest ESDA Coordinator. May I have a motion to approve Deputy Chief Michael Lang?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The last item under my report is a approval of a resolution of appreciation for K-9 Chase. Okay. Well, I don't know. What kind of a mood is he in? All right. All right. All right. This is a little bit different resolution, but whereas K-9 Chase has been a dedicated employee of the City of Lake Forest since April 2019, and whereas K-9 Chase honorably retired from the city on December 7th, 2024, and whereas K-9 Chase served alongside his handler, Officer Mike Hughes, and has been a vital partner in ensuring the safety of Lake Forest, trained in human tracking and trailing, narcotics detection, building searches, article searches, and apprehension, Chase assisted in numerous operations, helping to protect the community with his keen senses and unwavering commitment. Whereas K-9 Chase assisted 21 different local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies in 119 deployments, his unique skill set assisted in 24 arrests. And whereas K-9 Chase is a beloved member of the Lake Forest community and participated in 129 K-9 demonstrations and community relations activities throughout town at parks, schools, daycares, and special events. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Lake Forest that the council, on behalf of the administration and residents of the community, hereby expresses its appreciation and gratitude to K-9 Chase for a public service faithfully performed. Be it further resolved that this resolution be appropriately inscribed and conveyed to Chase with a copy to be included in the official minutes of the January 21st, 2025 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, the motion carries. Congratulations. Do I present this to,
Jason, do you have liver in your pocket or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yep.
Scooch in. You're all so tall.
Right.
Congratulations, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chase. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, the next item on the agenda is comments by city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. Good evening. I have one item under my report tonight. Included under your consent agenda is consideration of design services for potential Bank Lane streetscape improvements. And this is presented to you tonight as a follow-up to your conversation on this topic at the November Capital Workshop. And while it is included on your omnibus agenda, I have asked Community Development Director Kathy Zerniak to provide a high-level overview of the request before you and where the project currently stands. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Very tough acts to follow. The Central Business District study spanned the course of about 18 months. And consistently through that discussion, through the public comments, the advisory groups discussions, Bank Lane came up. And even before that latest focus on the Central Business District, probably for 20 years before that, every time a group or a task force was appointed to look at the Central Business District, Bank Lane always came up as it's just a unique corridor. It appears a bit neglected. What could it be? It's this quiet, short street that extends for 5 blocks from Vine to Wisconsin. So it's always been a kernel of an idea that has never moved forward. With direction from the council, as a result of the Central Business District study, there was direction to do something about it, to develop an enhancement plan for Bank Lane, the entire length of Bank Lane. The Lakota group was selected. We went through various public processes, had workshops, had a table out during the Thursday night concerts in the square, had online surveys, met with business owners, and the plan was developed with the thought that that plan would be available as the city moved forward with different infrastructure projects, as perhaps different properties along Bank Lane redeveloped, that this plan would be a guideline, would set expectations for what Bank Lane could and should be going forward. That brings us to where we are today. The Bank Lane plan itself had several objectives, high-level objectives, set expectations. As I mentioned, there's a likelihood that we're going to see some redevelopment proposals come forward for portions of Bank Lane. Having this as an initial guideline can help us talk to developers. We want additional gathering space for pedestrians, or we want additional landscaping, or we want certain types of streetscape treatment. The whole idea is to elevate Bank Lane, really build on the possibility of it being, or the reality of it being a pedestrian corridor, to create an experience so that when people walk down Bank Lane, maybe they're staying at the Deer Path Inn and they're walking down Bank Lane to go to Le Colonial. And it's something that they remember as perhaps a small lane in a village in Europe. To complement Market Square, this isn't intended to replace or to try and imitate Market Square, but really to be something distinct that picks up materials, that picks up design cues from Market Square, and also now from the Deer Path improvements that are already underway. To really recognize that we can create an environment that both balances pedestrian experiences while acknowledging that it needs to continue to be a service lane. A lot of businesses rely on this for trash pickup, for deliveries. So how do we create essentially a convertible street that can be different things at different times in different seasons, different days of the week, different times of the day? At your November budget workshop, you saw a similar presentation, and we really came to you at that time saying, okay, we have a Bank Lane plan. Should we proceed with construction drawings for at least one block, the block immediately north of Deer Path, between Deer Path and Southgate? We told you that if you gave us direction to move forward with construction and engineering drawings, that the intention would be to bid the project in the spring of 2025, April, so that we could coordinate the construction on that one block with kind of the final phase of the Deer Path streetscape improvements. When we talk about timing and why now with this block, we know that that block of Bank Lane is already going to be impacted. It's going to be needed for staging, vehicles or construction equipment or materials for Deer Path. As long as we're closing that block and using it anyway, should we then carry right through and try to complete those improvements on that block of Bank Lane so that the completion corresponds with the completion of the Deer Path improvements, minimizing impacts on businesses, recognizing that there's some anticipated activity on that block. We already know that Suites, really since the pandemic, has closed off a couple of those parking spaces, somewhat that raising some safety concerns in some minds. Is there a way that we can do that more elegantly, but more importantly, more safely? We do have plans in for, I believe the latest name is the Reading Room, a private bar eatery that is proposed in what used to be the Lake Forest Hospital resale shop, a couple doors south of Left Bank. So we know that there's going to be a new establishment there, and as we've talked with the team, the group that's supporting that, we've talked about perhaps changing that storefront so that they could have opening doors to spill out into the street. We know that this block of Bank Lane is used for the Deer Path Art Fair, for other activities. Is there a way to more quickly, safely, and comfortably close that street off on a more regular basis, not just for special events, but could we close it at 5 p.m. on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights to allow businesses to spill out into the street and to really have it be a pedestrian only while still preserving it, as I said, for service uses during the day. Probably most important on the timing sign, and it isn't up there, it carries the momentum. As I said, Bank Lane has been talked about for decades, and there's some interest now. Is this an opportunity to build upon that momentum? The block that we're talking about is Bank Lane from Deer Path to Southgate, so Suites to La Coloniale, with again some redevelopment proposed for a existing tenant space right mid-block. Not changing the character, but cleaning it up, making it a bit more distinctive, looking at the hardscape. How do we pull some of the materials that will already, as part of the Deer Path streetscape, come around this corner? That's part of the Deer Path improvement project, but how do we pull those a little bit further down the street? Right now, if you walk down those sidewalks, particularly on the west side of the street, it's about one person wide. You can't walk with two people. The proposal is to really look at either a curbless street or a minimum curb street, still taking appropriate care of the drainage, but doing something that really would allow this street to become something different after hours or at certain times. Some of the concepts for street amenities, not a lot. We don't want to clutter the streetscape. It's a narrow space. But recognize that street trees on the street probably aren't appropriate. They're really not viable. We have limited light. So looking at some limited masonry walls that help identify during the daytime some pedestrian spaces from vehicular spaces. Looking at some unique plaques that maybe call this out as, again, someplace that someone would remember, whether it's plaques in the pavement, whether it's some small plaques on piers or pillars at some point. Perhaps the seat walls can serve instead of benches, again, so we don't clutter the street. And again, removable, easily removable, installable, safe bollards that would allow us to close the street. So not changing it into something different, but really taking advantage and building upon the unique character that's already there. Just to review the budgeted amounts and the expenditures to date, in the current year's budget, the FY25 budget, $60,000 was allocated for the plan itself. That plan came in a little bit higher than that at $65,250. Bank Lane design, which is what's before you tonight, the actual development of construction drawings, budgeted was $60,000 for that. That came in higher. This number does include a 5% contingency. Also in the current budget is $500,000 for construction, which will not be expended for construction this year, but it is a dollar amount that was identified for Bank Lane. If you choose to go forward, we would come back to you probably at the first meeting in May with bids for the actual construction. What you will see proposed in the budget that will come before you shortly, the FY26 budget is $1.7 million for construction. So that those numbers are incorporated in the budget currently. We did put an RFP out. We actually, I believe, 8 firms expressed interest. We received 2 proposals back, likely because some of the more qualified firms recognized that Lakota Group and Thomas Engineering were already heavily involved, not only in developing the plan, but also involved in the Deer Path Improvement Project. So there's an important link there. The other firm, Kapoor, that did present a proposal, really did not incorporate in their base bid everything that would be needed to develop the construction and engineering plans. The exclusions that they included would have met or exceeded the number, the base bid that Lakota and Thomas Engineering put forward. So what is before you tonight is a request to consider authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the Lakota Group and Thomas Engineering for development of construction drawings, engineering drawings, and the necessary documents, the necessary coordination with utility companies for the amount of $119,043. And again, if you choose to do that, we would move that forward. Lakota Group and Thomas Engineering did commit to the schedule that we put forward, and we would anticipate issuing an RFP for bids for construction in mid-April and return to you in May, so you would give further consideration to awarding the bids, and at that time you would make the final decision on whether we move forward. Construction would be anticipated to start no later than mid-July, ideally a couple weeks before that, and again, with the completion of construction coinciding with the completion of the Deer Path improvements. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Weber.
Thank you, Kathy, for that presentation. I have two questions. The first is in reference to the proposals, the two proposals that came back. And as you just mentioned, that thank you, the Kapur Group, their bid came back at less than 50% of Lakota and Thomas Engineering. And I understand and appreciate the strong linkage between these two projects. What I'm wondering is, where did we, as a city, maybe miss the ball of budgeting $60,000 and it coming back almost double that with the 5% contingency? Perhaps did the scope of our project change that we were looking for? As you just said, Kapur did not include a lot of elements that Lakota did that we want. I'm just curious to know, it's a significant difference in price.
No question, it is a significant difference in price, and the responses were significantly different. Kapur is a firm that we're not familiar with. They are a Wisconsin firm, and again, there were a number of exclusions that really were tasks that absolutely needed to be completed. How did we come out with this number? I think when we were first looking at Bank Lane, we moved very quickly from developing a plan to let's just do this block and include it with Deer Path. So I think these numbers, again, we did allocate in the current budget $500,000 for construction, which we won't be expending this fiscal year. So I think we just didn't understand the scope of the project and the challenges, the materials, some of the work that would be needed.
That makes sense.
I think as we move forward with other phases of the Bank Lane, I think we'll have a better sense. I think we'll also have the experience of the Deer Path improvements as well as this block of Bank Lane.
Great. Thank you for the clarification. My second question is related to the timing of the construction. And what I'm hearing is that this project is starting in 2026. Is that correct?
The Bank Lane.
Bank Lane.
If you choose to move forward, we will work very quickly to develop the construction plans, bring the bids that we get for construction back to you this May of 25, with construction starting in July of this year.
Okay.
So that it coincides, the completion coincides with the Deer Path improvements.
Great. Well, that's where I was confused, because I'm looking at just with the fiscal years and understanding exactly how the timing is. So that's great clarification for me, because I don't think we need to push this out and have those businesses impacted any longer than necessary. For a business like a retail business like Sage Explorers, who relies on families with children going in for tutoring services and or shopping, it's hard to park your car a few blocks away and trek over. So that's great that we're going to be, if the council chooses to move at a swift pace.
And that really was the impetus for moving this block up. When initially, when the plan was developed, it really wasn't envisioned that way.
Yeah.
But that's exactly why it's before you tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes?
Director Cerniak, with the Bank Lane design still yet to be created, how did we come up with the budget for the 1.7 million?
We looked at.
Kathy, real quick, can I just interrupt and just ask to turn on your mic in case for the stream? Thanks.
It just times off.
It has.
It did.
Okay.
We'll work through the growing, I promise.
We're with you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it does.
We looked at the bids that came in for, or where we think we are with Deer Path Streetscape, replicating some of the same materials, looking at some other design elements. The Lakota Group and Thomas Engineering looked at some other projects that they're doing. So that's how we came up with that 1.7 number. We'll see how the bids come in.
And I'll just add to that too, you may recall that, the increase in estimated costs is consistent with what we experienced with the Deer Path Streetscape project itself. Now, that project hasn't gone out to bid quite yet, but when we came back to the council at the November workshop, consistent with what trends we've been seeing within the industry and for capital improvements, there's just been a significant escalation in project costs. We hope these budget estimates are on the conservative side, but it is consistent with how we've approached most of the capital improvements that are anticipated for the upcoming year.
Alderman Powers?
Thank you, Kathy. Two quick questions. What do we know about the infrastructure underneath some of those businesses? I know we did some work with the larger Deer Path and Central Business District. I'm assuming this was incorporated in, so for stormwater management, water, natural gas, we don't have any additional surprises there.
If I stop talking, it goes off.
Well, 3 minutes.
This actually could be helpful at some board and commission meetings.
Yeah.
I will say that. Yes, Kimley Horn did an infrastructure city study of the entire Central Business District, and that too came out of a recommendation from the Central Business District study that was done. So yes, this street was looked at. Certainly as we get into the construction drawings and engineering, we'll look more detailed, but there are a water main replacement wasn't determined to be necessary on this portion of Bank Lane. So there were no significant major projects, but we certainly will be able to address anything that comes up.
Great. And my second question is, as we think about a small portion of Bank Lane there and anticipate future work, whether it be to the south or the north of that, the materials that we've selected, we have confidence that we can kind of continue that theme? Or is the idea that this is so unique in that one block that may be a little different than what we may choose to do or future councils choose to do with either the northern or southern parts of Bank Lane as we go forward?
The Bank Lane plan, again, picks up both design cues and hardscape cues from both Market Square and the Deer Path Streetscape improvement. The plan looks at the block we're talking about now between Deer Path and Southgate, and the block between Northgate and Westminster really is having some similarities. Both of those blocks are treated at a bit more elevated level. The hardscape is more consistent across the entire street. As you move toward Wisconsin, the block between Westminster and Wisconsin, and as you move between Deer Path and Illinois and Vine, the idea is that the treatment would be lower level. For instance, the hardscape is more focused on those blocks at crosswalks and at the intersections. Each block is unique. Certainly as we look at the block further south, the biggest improvement that could occur there is undergrounding those utilities. And that is a big ticket item. As you look at the block by Hometown, that also has some above ground utilities, not as many, but another opportunity there is to close off one or more of the curb cuts to really make it more of a pedestrian friendly. I think our Corda parking lot there has two pretty large curb cuts. Could we close off one of those? So each block is a bit different, but more elevated north and south of Market Square, and then the improvements reduce a bit. But certainly cleanup and improvement, addressing the pavement is consistent, and materials would be consistent. But we can also learn from, once Deer Path is done in Bank Lane, if there are things we need to tweak, that's the opportunity we'll have.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Alderman Levert.
Kathy, if there's an estimated start date in July, what would be the projected timeline to complete it?
we would, the target date is to complete it concurrent with Deer Path improvements, which is by the end of October, mid to late October.
Thank you.
So before it gets this cold again.
Alderman Notes.
Thinking to step 2 of this, which is really how our businesses will utilize the opportunity. Francesca's, for instance, has utilization of the alleyway for overflow seating. Has the city given any consideration to what we would be sort of allowing a potential tenant that they could then rely on being able to use, whether it's suites, being able to rely on, I can put tables out there, or somebody else coming in down the street saying, in the evenings on Saturdays, I can rely on having 5 more tables out there. Have we given any thought to how we'll manage that?
I think we need to give more thought to it, but we already do work with businesses, whether it's foodstuffs, putting tables out in front, or suites as they do now. And suites will have an expanded area. But I think as we see how this is utilized, we certainly will want to talk about insurance or legal aspects. So I think there's more work to do around how this space could be used. But in talking with businesses, I think there's real excitement. And in talking to potential businesses on other parts of Bank Lane, I think there's a real draw. I think everywhere you look, the outdoor seating seasonally is really an attraction.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, so this item sits at item 18 and the pending omnibus. And so I'm just going to, since we just had this discussion, I'm going to ask all of you now. Are you all comfortable leaving this in the omnibus, or would you like it pulled out as a separate item? Is there any, I'll just ask it this way. Is there anybody who wants this pulled out as a separate item? No. Okay, perfect. All right, we move on. Kathy, thank you. All right.
That concludes my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Perfect. The next item on the agenda is an opportunity for citizens to address the city council. Is there anyone present who would like to address the council at this time? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we will move on to committee reports, of which there are none this evening. And then the items for omnibus vote consideration, of which there are 18 this evening. As always, if there's any item that an alderman would like to have removed or taken separately, please let me know after I've read all the items. Item 1, approval of the November 18th, 2024 City Council meeting minutes. Item 2, approval of the December 2nd, 2024 City Council meeting minutes. Item 3, approval of a resolution appointing a delegate and alternate delegate to the Intergovernmental Risk Management Agency. Item 4, approval of resolutions required for bank purposes to amend authorized signers on city bank accounts and assign Diane Hall, Assistant Finance Director, as the principal authority for the Illinois Funds account. Item 5, approval of the check register for the period of November 23rd through December 31st, 2024. Item 6, approval of an amended memorandum of understanding between the City of Lake Forest and the Lake Forest Library. Item 7, consideration of an ordinance amending the City of Lake Forest City Code regarding Class 1 and 2 liquor licenses. First reading and appropriate final approval. Item 8, approval of a third amendment to the license agreement between the City of Lake Forest and the Music Institute of Chicago to occupy a portion of Vollweiler Hall located at 40 East Old Mill Road. Item 9, approval of fiscal year 25 special event funding for Friends of Lake Forest Parks and Recreation in the amount of $70,000. Item 10, authorize the city manager to execute documents extending the drawdown period of the loan agreement between the City of Lake Forest and Elwha Farm Foundation. Item 11, recommendation award of bid for the Deer Path Golf Course Fire Suppression System Project to Slavik Resniak Incorporated in the amount of $168,550 to include a 10% contingency in the amount of $16,855 for a total cost of $185,405. Item 12, authorization to dispose of city property to the highest bidder, Rogers Nursery, for the sale of a 2013 Chevy Tahoe in the amount of $4,250. Item 13, authorization to dispose of city property to the highest bidder, Rob January, for the sale of 2003 Chevrolet W3500 dump truck in the amount of $7,721. Item 14, authorization for the mayor or city manager to execute a grant agreement between the City of Lake Forest and the State of Illinois Department of Natural Resources for the McClory Bike Path Resurfacing Project. Item 15, consideration of ordinances approving recommendations from the Building Review Board for 270 Majestic Oak Court and 245 West Westminster. First reading, and if desired by council, final approval. Item 16, consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission in support of granting a building scale variance for an addition at 1320 Elm Tree Road. First reading, and if desired by council, final approval. Item 17, consideration of ordinances approving recommendations from the Zoning Board of Appeals for 827 Oakwood Avenue and 1320 Elm Tree Road. First reading, and if desired by city council, final approval. And item 18, consideration of a recommendation from staff to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with the Lakota Group Thomas Engineering in an amount not to exceed $119,043.75 for the preparation of detailed construction and engineering plans and construction support for enhancements to the block of Bank Lane between Deer Path and Southgate. At this time, can I have a motion to approve the items as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
This will be a roll call vote. We're going to have real problems with this recording, by the way.
We'll get it fixed, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
This evening starts with Alderman Weber.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. Well, it's okay. A lot of what I've said, people don't need to hear. The next item on the agenda is old business, of which there's none this evening, and I will admit I don't quite understand the next item, which is new business, but I'm going to ask the staff to take a look at amending the 1 and 2 liquor licenses to allow the liquor license holder to establish their own corkage fees and remove the city from directing costs. I kind of thought we already did that with the omnibus. Wasn't that what we were doing, or was that something else?
No, that was, somebody wanted to do, Winter Club wanted BYOB.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Lost track of that one. Anyway, we had a discussion about this, and currently the city's ordinance has a $10 limitation on corkage fees, which nobody pays any attention to for obvious reasons. And so we'd had a discussion about amending this to basically allow the businesses who have such licenses to determine their own corkage fees and use their own criteria, and removing us from that. So I guess we're going to ask the staff to draw that up. Very good.
We discussed that as well.
Would you like to discuss it?
I was just curious. I didn't know that we had made a determination on that. I know we had said at the budget meeting about the fact that there was in the ordinance it stated no one was following it. I was just curious where we went from there.
I think the approach to this is to sort of create or draft an ordinance so that then you can look at it, and then we'll have the discussion about whether you want to move forward with it.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, very good. All right, at this time, are there any other items that the council members would like to discuss? None, very good. Okay, So at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2, parentheses C and 6, the lease of property owned by the public body. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Aye.
But,
Aye.
sorry, Alderman Clemmons.
Aye.
Aye.
Alderman Levert.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good. Okay, there will be no additional business at the completion of the executive session.
When someone else hits,
I think it's on a time.
I was
There's
hoping.
like literally.
I think it stays on longer.
If you hit it to the left, it's short?
I think if you hit it right on, it's kind of on and off.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I was finding if I held it down, it stayed on.
It needs to be tweaked for sure.
I don't know. I don't know. Not mine. I'm not.
All righty.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to watch that. You won't hear anything. It would be on and off. Probably went off.
Well, it's crazy because I turned it on, and when I went to vote, it turned off by itself.
While I was talking, he's watching.
It'll be.
Private drinking.
Yeah, what is this?
It's, as I understand it,